Benjamin Netanyahu. The Iron Leader of Israel Benjamin Netanyahu, known to millions around the world simply as Bibi, is one of the most recognized and enduring political figures of the modern era. Loved by many, criticized by others, Netanyahu's story is one of courage, ambition, tragedy, and political mastery. His life mirrors the story of Israel itself, born in struggle, shaped by conflict, and driven by the dream of survival and strength. Early life. The son of Zionist parents Benjamin Netanyahu was born on October 21, 1949, in Tel Aviv, just 1 year after the founding of the State of Israel. His parents, Benzion and Sila Netanyahu, were among the early pioneers of the Zionist movement. His father, Benzion Netanyahu, was a respected historian and an ardent Zionist activist who devoted his life to studying Jewish history and defending the idea of a Jewish homeland. The Netanyahu household was one of discipline, intellect, and fierce patriotism. From a young age, Benjamin absorbed his father's vision that Israel was not merely a country but a destiny, a sanctuary for a people who had survived centuries of persecution. His father's influence would shape Benjamin's worldview, that the survival of the Jewish people depended on strength, unity, and vigilance. A new world, life in America. When Benjamin was a teenager, his family moved to the United States, where his father took a teaching position. They settled in Cheltenham, Pennsylvania, a quiet suburb of Philadelphia. For young Benjamin, this was a cultural shock. He had left behind a young and struggling Israel for the vastness of American life. In America, Benjamin attended Cheltenham High School, where he quickly stood out for his intellect, discipline, and seriousness. His classmates called him Ben. He excelled academically and developed a deep appreciation for Western values, democracy, innovation, and freedom of speech, principles that he would later emphasize in his political career. He was also influenced by the American emphasis on communication and presentation. Netanyahu learned how to express ideas clearly, convincingly, and in perfect English, skills that would later make him one of the most articulate Israeli politicians on the world stage. Returned to Israel and military service in 1967. At the age of 18, Netanyahu returned to Israel and joined the Israel Defense Forces, IDF. He became a member of the Sayeret Matkal, Israel's elite special forces unit known for its daring operations. During his 5 years of service, he took part in numerous high-risk missions, including counter-terrorism operations deep inside enemy territory. He served with distinction and earned the rank of captain. One of his fellow soldiers later recalled that Netanyahu was not the loudest man in the unit, but he was one of the most focused. He believed that discipline and courage were the keys to survival. In 1969, during the War of Attrition, Netanyahu was injured in battle. The wound left him scarred but not weakened. Instead, it strengthened his resolve. The military years taught him lessons that would define his leadership style: plan carefully, act decisively, and never show fear. The tragedy of Entebbe. No event shaped Benjamin Netanyahu more profoundly than the death of his older brother, Yoni Netanyahu, in 1976. Yoni was the commander of an elite Israeli unit that carried out the Entebbe rescue operation, one of the most daring missions in military history. After terrorists hijacked an Air France plane and held Jewish passengers hostage in Uganda, Israeli forces launched a bold rescue mission thousands of miles from home. The operation succeeded. Almost all the hostages were saved. But Yoni Netanyahu, the unit's commander, was killed in action. Benjamin, then 26, was devastated. Yoni had been his hero, his mentor, and his closest friend. The tragedy transformed him. He later said that Yoni's death taught him that the battle for survival never ends. From that moment, Benjamin Netanyahu became committed to ensuring that Israel would always be strong enough to defend itself, no matter the cost. Education and early career after Yoni's death. Netanyahu returned to the United States to complete his education. He studied architecture and business management at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, and later attended courses at Harvard University. At MIT, he impressed professors and classmates with his discipline and clarity of thought. He was not only academically brilliant but also deeply serious about Israel's future. He often engaged in discussions about the Middle East, arguing passionately that Israel's survival depended on strength, not concessions. After earning his degrees, he worked briefly as a management consultant at the Boston Consulting Group, where he met Mitt Romney, the future U.S. Senator and presidential candidate. The two men developed mutual respect and remained in contact for decades. From diplomacy to politics in the early 1980s, Netanyahu returned to Israel and began working in public service. His intelligence, fluency in English, and polished demeanor made him an ideal diplomat. He was appointed Deputy Chief of Mission at the Israeli Embassy in Washington, D.C., and later became Israel's ambassador to the United Nations. His years in New York gave him a powerful international platform. At the UN, Netanyahu delivered sharp, passionate speeches defending Israel's right to exist and warning the world about the dangers of terrorism and rising extremism. This was during a time when Israel faced growing international criticism, but Netanyahu's command of English and persuasive style earned him respect, even among opponents. He became a regular guest on American television, skillfully explaining Israel's position in clear, confident language. His combination of intellect, patriotism, and media savvy marked the beginning of his political rise. The first premiership, 1996 to 1999, Netanyahu officially entered politics as a member of the Likud Party, Israel's main right-wing political group. In 1993, after the assassination of Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, Israel entered a period of political instability. Netanyahu, then in his mid-40s, quickly rose to prominence as a strong and charismatic voice against terrorism. In 1996, at the age of 46, Benjamin Netanyahu became Israel's youngest ever prime minister. His first term was turbulent. He inherited a divided country, one part hopeful for peace after the Oslo Accords, and another fearful that Israel was giving up too much security for promises that might never be kept. Netanyahu tried to balance both worlds, but he leaned strongly toward security first. He negotiated the Hebron Agreement, withdrawing Israeli troops from parts of the city while insisting on strict security guarantees. Yet his hardline policies often put him at odds with both Palestinian leaders and Western allies. In 1999, after a series of political disputes and public fatigue, Netanyahu lost the election to Ehud Barak. For many politicians, this would have been the end. For Netanyahu, it was only a pause. Years in the wilderness and return to power after his defeat. Netanyahu briefly stepped away from politics, focusing on writing and speaking. But he never left the public eye. His speeches continued to emphasize one message: Israel must remain strong and self-reliant. In the early 2000s, as global terrorism rose and tensions with Iran grew, Netanyahu's warnings began to sound prophetic. By 2009, amid public frustration with ongoing conflict and economic challenges, Netanyahu made a dramatic comeback, winning the election and returning as prime minister. This marked the beginning of one of the longest premierships in Israeli history. He would serve continuously from 2009 to 2021, reshaping Israel's economy, military, and international standing. The architect of modern Israel during his years in power, Netanyahu oversaw major transformations in Israel's economy and foreign policy. Economically, he championed free market reforms, encouraging innovation, technology, and entrepreneurship. Under his leadership, Israel became known as the startup nation, home to hundreds of high-tech companies and global investments. Diplomatically, Netanyahu pursued a strategy that focused less on Europe and more on building alliances in Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. He strengthened ties with India, improved relations with several Arab nations, and worked closely with the United States on defense cooperation. His toughest stance was against Iran's nuclear program. Netanyahu repeatedly warned the world that a nuclear-armed Iran would threaten not only Israel but global security. His famous 2012 speech at the United Nations, where he used a cartoon bomb to illustrate Iran's progress toward nuclear weapons, became one of the most memorable moments in modern diplomacy. Controversy and political battles. Despite his achievements, Netanyahu's career has been marked by controversy. Critics accused him of being authoritarian and self-serving. Allegations of corruption and bribery led to multiple investigations and court cases. Mass protests erupted in Israel, demanding his resignation. Yet Netanyahu remained defiant, insisting that he was the victim of political persecution. He often said, "They're not after me, they're after you. I'm just standing in their way." Even after being temporarily removed from power in 2021, Netanyahu never gave up. In 2022, he made another political comeback, forming a new government, once again proving his ability to survive and adapt in Israel's complex political landscape. Personal life and legacy. Benjamin Netanyahu has been married 3 times and has 3 children. Despite the pressures of politics, he has often spoken about his devotion to family and the lasting influence of his brother, Yoni's memory. Netanyahu's leadership style is defined by determination, communication, and strategic thinking. To his supporters, he is the defender of Israel, the man who kept the nation safe in a dangerous region. To his critics, he is divisive and power-obsessed, a leader who puts political survival above unity. But regardless of opinion, there is no denying his impact. Few leaders in modern history have remained so dominant for so long. Netanyahu's story is that of a man who believes that leadership is not about popularity. It is about responsibility, security, and vision. Conclusion. The Iron Leader's enduring shadow. Benjamin Netanyahu's life is a blend of triumph and tragedy, conviction and controversy. From the disciplined soldier to the polished diplomat, from the grieving brother to the political survivor, his journey reflects the resilience of Israel itself. He has faced wars, peace talks, enemies, and endless political storms. Yet through it all, one belief has guided him: that Israel must never depend on the goodwill of others, only on its own strength. As history continues to unfold, Netanyahu's name will remain etched alongside the greatest leaders of Israel, a man who, through courage and controversy alike, defined an era.